Hello, everyone, and welcome to Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin, and today I'll be discussing the next director in my director series. And in this series, I pick 5 movies from a director's filmography, and then I do a short review of each one of them, going from my least favorite to favorite one overall. So, without further ado, let's discuss Michael Curtiz. All right, so this is him right here, and I'm going to read a little bit from his Wikipedia page about his life and then also his directing style. So, Michael Curtiz, born Mano Commoner, or Curtiz Mihaly, which is Hungarian. He was born on December 24th, 1886, and he passed away April 10th, 1962. He was a Hungarian-American film director recognized as one of the most prolific directors in film history. He directed classic films from the silent era and numerous others during Hollywood's golden age, when the studio system was still prevalent. Curtiz was already a well-known director in Europe when Warner Brothers invited him to Hollywood in 1926 when he was 39 years old. He had already directed 64 films in Europe and soon helped Warner Brothers become the fastest-growing movie studios. He directed 102 films during his Hollywood career, mostly at Warner Brothers, where he directed 10 actors to Oscar nominations, including James Cagney, Joan Crawford, and they won their only Academy Awards underneath his direction. He put Doris Day and John Garfield on screen for the first time, and he made stars of Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, and Bette Davis. He himself was nominated 5 times and won twice, one for Best Short Subject for Sons of Liberty, and once as Best Director for Casablanca. So you could kind of tell already my love for his filmography, because as many of you know, that's my favorite movie of all time. Curtiz was among those who introduced to Hollywood a visual style using artistic lighting, extensive and fluid camera movement, high crane shots, and unusual camera angles. He was versatile and could handle any film genre, from melodrama, comedy, love story, film noir, musical, war story, western, horror, or even historical epic. He always paid attention to the human interest aspect of every story, stating that the human and fundamental problems of real people were the basis of all good drama. So some kind of, I guess you would say, controversies during his filmography. The death of 25 horses in the charge of the Light Brigade under Curtiz's direction led to a near-violent confrontation between Curtiz and film star Errol Flynn, which led to the U.S. Congress and the ASPCA to enact legislation and policy to prevent cruelty to animals on the set of movies. So that's pretty crazy. I mean, back in those days, they didn't have a lot of the regulations we have now. So it's interesting that he may have played a hand in that a little bit. Curtiz helped popularize the classic swashbuckler with films such as Captain Blood from 1935 and The Adventures of Robin Hood 1938. He directed many other dramas which are considered classics: Angels with Dirty Faces from 1938, The Sea Wolf from 1941, Casablanca from 1942, and Mildred Pierce from 1945. He directed leading musicals including Yankee Doodle Dandy, This Is the Army, White Christmas, and he made comedies with Life with Father and We're No Angels. So just looking at some of those movies there, and again, he made close to 150, 180, I want to say. He transcended every genre. He could do any film that anyone put in front of him, and I think that's amazing. Some people would look at that as like a journeyman director, which is seen as I would say like a derogatory term sometimes, but no, like that's really cool that he could do that he could go to any genre. He could film in any way he wanted to, I love that. I think that's really, really cool. All right, and then a little bit more about his directing style. So Curtiz always invested the time necessary to prepare all aspects of a film before shooting. As far as I'm concerned, he said, the chief work in directing a film is preparing a story for the screen. Nothing is as important. A director can be likened to the field general of an army. He should know more clearly than anyone else what is coming, what to expect, and I believe this as a sound working plan. By putting time into preparation, he cut down on delays after production started, which gave him the ability to put on at about 6 films a year until the 1940s. Curtiz himself rarely expressed his philosophy or filmmaking style in writing, since he was always too busy making films. So no real autobiography and only a few media interviews even exist. His brother observed that Curtiz was shy, almost humble in his private life, as opposed to his take charge attitude of his work. His brother added that he did not want anybody to write a book about him. He refused to even talk about the idea. When Curtiz was once asked to sum up his philosophy of making films, he said, I put all the art into my pictures that I think the audience can stand. So he's just a really, really cool guy. And, I've discovered him recently. I've been really, really fascinated by his filmography. And so I'm really excited to tell you about these films today. And so now let's talk about my number 5, which is Mystery of the Wax Museum from 1933. And this film, I gave a 4 out of 5. I actually really like it. And so that should show you kind of how the rest of this review will go. Let me give a short synopsis from the film's letterbox page. The disappearance of people and corpses leads to a reporter to a wax museum and a sinister sculptor. So I think that pretty well sums up what the plot is about. What I love about this movie, I think it's a great horror film. And I love the statues, how creepy they are, how creepy the villain is. And there's a reporter character in that movie who I think is hilarious. She's really the star of the film for me. And the only issue I have, and kind of why I'm giving it a 4, is I wasn't a fan that she chose her boss over the guy who actually loved her by the end of the film. I didn't like that as much. I think it would have been better with the other guy. But other than that, no, I love this movie. And what's cool about this is in the early 30s. And so color wasn't really as available as it is now. So this is some of the earliest examples of that with what's called the 2-strip Technicolor process, where there's just 2 major colors. And so what I love about it is it gives it a real wax look. Like all the figures, they actually look like wax characters. I really, really love that. Like this Marie Antoinette example right here. Really, really cool. And my buddy Alex Figueroa from Geeks and Flicks, he loves this movie too. And we actually did a review of it a few months ago. So if you haven't seen that yet, check that out. It's a great review. And in fact, I love this movie so much. I actually have a copy of it right here from the Warner Archive. It's a great film. I highly recommend checking it out. And that's why I gave. And so I gave it a 4 out of 5, though, which is not a bad score. And so that kind of gives you a little insight into what the rest of this review is going to look like. All right, so now let's get into my number 4, which is The Adventures of Robin Hood from 1938, starring Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland. So let me give you the short synopsis of the film from Letterboxd. Robin Hood fights nobly for justice against the evil Sir Guy of Gisborne while striving to win the hand of the beautiful Maid Marian. That's a pretty good summary. If you're familiar with the Robin Hood story, especially if you've seen the Disney one, this is pretty much beat for beat the same thing. I love it. I absolutely love this movie. I love the beautiful Technicolor here. And I think Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland, they have great chemistry together. There's some great action scenes with like sword fighting and whatnot, kind of giving, like I talked about earlier, that swashbuckling feel to it. I love it. And, Claude Rains, he's a great Prince John. Actually, is it Sir Guy? I can't remember the name of the character. I think he's Prince John, though, and I love it. I think he's great in that role. And I think this is a great adaptation of the film. So I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. I really, really liked it. And I would show you my copy of it, but it's in storage somewhere. But I got it on VHS, and it's a really, really excellent movie. I believe it's on HBO Max right now, if I'm not mistaken. And I think the same goes for Mystery of the Wax Museum. Usually around Halloween time, they're on there. But yeah, no, I absolutely recommend it. I love it. Great film. All right, so let's move on to my number 3, which is White Christmas from 1954. And this stars Bing Crosby, Danny Kaye, and a couple others. And let me give you a short synopsis of the film from Letterboxd. So 2 talented song and dance men team up after the war to become one of the hottest acts in show business. In time, they befriend and become romantically involved with the beautiful Haynes sisters, who comprise the sister act. And that pretty much sums up the film. I discussed this film a little bit last year. I reviewed it last year, and I love the sets that they have in it. I love the direction of the staging and whatnot. And that to me really showcases Curtiz's ability to direct hundreds of people on set. Like there's lots of people doing these crazy dances and crazy technical stuff in the background. I love it. It's really, really cool. Really showcases his abilities. And the music, of course. I believe it's Irving Berlin, I want to say is his name. I could be mistaken, but yeah, no, it's great music too. I mean, White Christmas is such a quintessential Christmas song. So yeah, no, it's a great film. I highly recommend it. And I give it a 4.5 out of 5 as well. And I actually don't own this one, so I look forward to purchasing it at some point. All right, so then let's talk about my number 2, which is Yankee Doodle Dandy from 1942, starring James Cagney. So let me give you the plot synopsis from Letterboxd. A film of the life of the renowned film composer, playwright, actor, dancer, and singer George M. Cohan. And that pretty much sums it up. This is the life of George Cohan, who's played by James Cagney in this film, and just kind of his life, making songs and doing it for the military and being very patriotic and whatnot, and just kind of the rise and fall in fame. Because he started out with an act with his family, and then they kind of split off. He does his own thing. Then at the end, they kind of unite together, and I really love that. I love the music and the costumes. I think they're great, and just like White Christmas, I think it really shows Curtiz's ability. I think James Cagney is great. I love the story of them starting out poor and becoming one of the most successful performers of all time. I think that's really cool because this is a real guy, by the way. I don't know much about him. I do know that this film definitely takes some creative liberties. You should kind of expect that with biopics, and especially ones based on real people, and especially ones that are musicals too. Because what is it? Bohemian Rhapsody comes to mind. That one is not as accurate as the real story, but it's still entertaining, still interesting, still cool. And I love how unabashedly patriotic and American this film is, and I'm not ashamed of it at all. I think it's great, and I think people need to watch it more and kind of feel a sense of patriotism. I love that so much, and I think this film really helps exude that a little bit. Are there some controversial things in it? Sure, it's especially by today's standards, but we have to remember it's a product of its time and whatnot. But I still think it's a great film worth checking out, and I believe it's on HBO Max. That's where I saw it. I refuse to call it Max because it sounds like I'm talking about a person or something. It doesn't sound right. But yeah, no, I like it a lot. One of my favorites, 5 out of 5. I definitely will be purchasing it at some point. I believe Warner Archive did a release of it as well. They do a lot of his movies, actually, which is really, really cool. All right, so now I'll talk about my number 1. And if anybody knows me, it's no surprise. It's Casablanca from 1942. This is a film I've talked about so many times. I've reviewed it so many times. So if you want more in-depth analysis of it, go ahead and check out my YouTube review of it or podcast review of it. And I think I even did a Twitter space talking about it once. So go ahead and check that out. But let me talk about it a little bit anyways. And so let me talk a little bit about the plot from the Letterboxd. In Casablanca, Morocco, in December of 1941, a cynical American expatriate meets a former lover with unforeseen complications. Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. Although I do think it's a little lacking there. I absolutely love this movie. This is my favorite movie of all time. And, I have this funny tagline for, of all the movies and all the favorites list, and you walked into mine. I love this movie so much. I love the acting. I love the directing, cinematography, the writing, all of it. I love it all so much. It is my favorite movie of all time. And to me, it really is the quintessential showing of Michael Curtiz and his abilities and able to get all these people together to make this wonderful film and a wonderful project. In fact, this is one of the few films I actually own on 4K, because I have a 4K player, but only recently have I started getting into that. And it comes with a really, really cool steelbook that I absolutely love. And I'll open it for you. It won't have the discs in it because I put that inside some sleeves. I store my discs in a different room than where the cases are, just because it's closer to my TV. But yeah, I love this movie. I recommend checking it out. I tell everyone to watch it. This is from Zavi, which is a UK, I think UK because of the rating system they have. But it comes with great stuff. Like this is a little packaging here. It's got like a poster, right? I'll leave it folded, but it's got the movie poster. It's got these little cards. So this is Rick's Cafe. And then on the back side is a map of Morocco, and it has a little booklet inside of it, which is really cool. So just talking about like the history of the film and the production and whatnot, I think is really, really cool. Look at that poster. And just overall, I love this movie so much. I mean, look at that. Isn't that a great postcard there? Oh, I love it so much. But it is my favorite movie of all time. I've only watched it recently, actually. I want to say it was 2019. It was one of the first movies my wife and I purchased after we were married, and I fell in love with it then. It's a great film. I recommend checking it out. And it really is, to me, the quintessential Michael Curtiz film. It sums up everything that I think is great about his filmography. You know, his talent, his ability to find talent, to work on his films and whatnot. He's a great director. I love watching his movies, and I love it so much. I even bought this biography of him by Alan K. Rody, who, if you guys haven't followed him yet, he's really, really cool. He actually puts on the Arthur Lyons Film Noir Festival that I go to every year, and he works at the Film Noir Foundation. So if you're really into film noir, you should really follow him on Twitter and whatnot. And I'll have links to his stuff in the description and links to where you can buy this book. But I love it. I've gotten pretty far in it. I'm in chapter 17, page 165. There's like 700 pages in this, but it really gives an in-depth analysis of the life of this director, because there's not that much known about him. And this took Alan Rody years to put together, just because there's so little information we have about him, because he was a very private guy. He didn't give very many interviews. He, like I was reading earlier, he did not like giving interviews. He did not want biographies written about him. And so I'm just grateful that we even have this. It's amazing. It's got some great pictures in it too throughout it, just about his different projects and whatnot. But no, I love Michael Curtiz. I love his filmography. He's a director I recommend checking out, especially in this era of Hollywood, because he worked with pretty much everybody. Over 180 movies. That's just insane to me. He had an insane work ethic and an insane ability to capture amazing movies with all the people he had working with him. And so, yeah, no, I absolutely recommend checking out all of these films. I'm still watching a couple more, because I made a list a while ago about 10 movies for his career, and I still need to watch 5 more of them, because I just love it so much. It's a little ambitious. I'm hoping someday I could see at least 50 of his movies. Who knows? Not many of them are left available, especially his silent era ones. A lot of them have disappeared, sadly. But I love his films. I can't wait to check out more. And yeah, those are my thoughts on Michael Curtiz. All right. So the next director in this series, and this will be coming out October 21st. And these videos, I'm only going to be doing pre-recorded. I don't have the time to do live streams anymore for it. So I decided the live streams I will be doing, though, will be with my buddy Evan, where we'll be talking about just different topics. So we'll kind of switch off. Part of it, 1 month will be on his channel, 1 month will be on mine, doing a different live stream on a different topic. So make sure to follow him at Pop Culture 33 here on YouTube. And then also, if you're not subscribed to me, make sure to follow me as well. But I'm excited for that. I've only seen one film from William Wyler so far, so I'm trying to watch all of those before that episode comes out. But I'm really excited for that. He's known for Ben-Hur. He's known for, I think he did a version of Wuthering Heights, I want to say. But yeah, I'm excited to check out his filmography. All right, well, those are my thoughts on Michael Curtiz and his filmography. Thank you so much for watching today's episode in my director series. And make sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Really Old Movies, where I discuss details about the week's particular film, because I do podcast episodes that review individual films. New episodes are released Saturdays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and then video versions on YouTube and Rumble. All right, thank you so much. This has been Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin. Take care.